From the creators of the original Cheat Sheet Rankings, this is the Fantasy Index Podcast. Brought to you by Fantasy Index, the original and best since 1987. Now your hosts, Luke Wilson and Colt Williams.
Welcome back, everybody. I appreciate you tuning into the podcast. If you're on the YouTube, you'll see it's only me, Colt Williams, here again, Fantasy Index Podcast, kicking it off here. Luke, unfortunately, was going through some network connectivity issues, so we're going to power on, just as he did for me last week when I was dealing with the wildfires out here in California. We're going to set you straight here for week 12 of the Fantasy Index Podcast. Like, it's here. The fantasy season is not come and gone, but it's still cruising. Everybody's getting into the playoffs. It's time. It's crunch time. This is what you've waited for. The playoffs are among us. But first, if you haven't already, check out the fantasyindex.com/store where you can pre-order the 2025 Fantasy Football Index magazine, order index bets where you can get our sports betting newsletter, and you still have time to get the in-season cheat sheets. They're all there. So again, if you want to see more, fantasyindex.com/store. Wow. This weekend, crazy games, tons of fun games, monster games, divisional games. You had, Ravens, Steelers, like that was a fun one. Chargers, Bengals, Packers, Bears, and probably an all-time great with the Chiefs, Bills. Josh Allen, last second, running it in. Pretty iconic. That was a really fun game there this weekend. But just a question of the day that we had, how are you guys doing in your fantasy leagues? I want to know how you're doing. Luke wants to know how you're doing. What's it looking like for you? Are you still in? Are you out? Me personally, I'm in 7 leagues. I clinched the playoffs in 3 leagues here this weekend, and there's 4 of them I'm still in the hunt. I haven't quite got there yet. One, I'm like a 5-6, so I'm kind of on the outside looking in, but all the math says that I could still get in there. It's a crazy season. Like, there was this, I lost by 0.3 in a league. I pulled off an upset in another one where I was down, I think it was 27, and all I had was Joe Mixon. I was like, oh my goodness, he has to have his best game of the season. And then he has his best game of the season. It was like 150 scrimmage yards, 3 touchdowns. Like, you couldn't have asked for more from Joe Mixon, but he locked up a dub for me. It's crazy. I mean, if you don't really know if you're in the playoffs or not, like, again, I have one where it's a 5-6 record. I thought I was not really out, but on the outside looking in, and it turns out I was. It's a cool website. They're not a sponsor. It's theffhub.com. Again, not a sponsor, but you can import your league if it's like ESPN, Sleeper, Yahoo, you name it. It'll spit out a whole bunch of really fun tools like playoff odds, schedule comparison. So, if you had somebody else's schedule, maybe I wasn't 5-6. I'd be, 8-3 or something like that. That's what I saw. It was a little sad and bittersweet, but again, it's kind of a cool tool, not a sponsor. Let's get into what everybody is here for, the waiver wires. First, news and injuries. There's actually not a lot this weekend. Monday Night Football, we had Jake Ferguson go down with concussion. We've seen it over and over again. Concussions are typically, you're going to at least miss a week. So I wouldn't expect him back. But Luke Schoonmaker, his backup tight end, he looked okay. I don't know if I want to play the backup tight end for the Cooper Rush-led Dallas Cowboys, but there aren't a lot of great options. We'll have some here in the waiver episodes, so I've got other names for you. Gabe Davis, hopefully you weren't paying him in the first place. Torn meniscus, out for the season for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Brian Thomas and Evan Ingram seem like the only people left for Mac Jones to throw to, assuming it's still Mac Jones. Trevor Lawrence still hasn't been ruled out or anything like that for Week 12, so something to monitor. Bryce Young, he's going to start for the Panthers, and their rookie running back, Jonathan Brooks, is going to make his debut. So he's the number 1 rush defense for running backs, so it's not ideal. It's actually the worst. So nobody's starting Jonathan Brooks. Hopefully, it is Bye-Apocalypse, so we have a lot of teams on bye. 6 teams on bye this week. I mean, Falcons, Bills, Bengals, Jags, Saints, Jets, like so many teams on bye. Like it couldn't be worse. And then in week 14, we have the same thing. So try to game plan for that, as we've kind of said all season if you're a recurring viewer. And then last thing, Daniel Jones, he's benched. Tommy DeVito, he's in. We joked about him, Danny DeVito's cousin. Like, he actually wasn't bad for fantasy as far as a fantasy quarterback goes. He, through his 5 starts, he was a quarterback 13. Like, I did not know he was that good. You look at his passing numbers, you'd say, ooh, okay. It was the rushing is where he made his hay. So I think this is necessarily an uptick for whether it's Neighbors or Wan'Dale Robinson. They're still playable. I look at this as like a neutral, change. It's worth noting that, Tommy DeVito last season, when he was the 5-game starter, his yards per attempt was 6.45, which if you were to put that up to, quarterbacks here this season, it'd be about 29th, 30th, one of the lowest yards per attempt. So bodes a little bit better for Wan'Dale Robinson, but he also didn't have Malik Neighbors last year. So we'll see how that kind of goes. All right. This is it. Running back waivers is very simple. Make sure you get your insurance running backs. Do not go into the playoffs with Kyron Williams if you don't have Blake Corum. Don't go into the playoffs if you have James Conner and don't have Trey Benson. Like, they're available in 80, 75% of leagues. Like, you need to go out there and get them if you don't already. One of them just went on to buy, so maybe Trey Benson is actually out there. But again, any backup, even if it's, Braylon Allen, he hasn't been great, but he is the clear backup for Breece Hall if he were to go down, who just had a monster game. So not saying, Braylon Allen is going to go in there and do that, but you want him to be on your team or at least on your roster than your opponents as well. So that's the biggest thing with the running back waivers. Javonte Williams, he may have been dropped for some reason over the weekend, and if some reason would be Audric Estime. He came out there, he lit the world on fire there in week 10, and then in week 11, he had 14 snaps. Like, Javonte Williams 32. It was not a good look for Audric Estime. Sean Payton keeps saying each and every single week, he said it for like the last 3 weeks, that Audric Estime needs to get more involved, and it was like he didn't get involved the first week, super involved the second, and then not involved here this last game. So it's a backfield I really don't want a piece of, which the Broncos are looking better, so I'd like to, but overall it's frustrating as a dynasty or a redraft manager of the Denver Broncos backfield. Let's go to the Steelers backfield. Jaylen Warren, still available in about half of leagues. He's flex worthy. Like, you can flex him, especially in a league where there's 6 teams on bye. He's getting 12 to 16 opportunities since week 7. That's when Russell Wilson took over. Like, he has upside as well if Najee Harris were to go down. It's a PPR play. You're not literally looking for a lot there, but it's more of if an injury happens. But it's not like you could play him over a Braylon Allen who's getting 1-2 points a game and not really flex worthy, but is also a backup. The last running back I want to talk about, Roschon Johnson. I'm not saying you have to pick him up. I'm just saying monitor him. They had a change in an offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron. He's out. Roschon tied a season high of 10 carries here in their almost win against the Packers. Absolutely brutal schedule coming up. They get the Vikings, who are second best against running backs, and then they get the Lions, which are the fourth best against running backs. Like, you're not starting him, but it's something to monitor, especially if you're the DeAndre Swift manager, who was looking really bad until that one run. The one run that saved him, I think it was like a 40-yard touchdown run. But nevertheless, yeah, something to monitor there in Chicago. On to wide receiver waivers. Going right into New York, Wan'Dale Robinson again, coming out of the bye. He's 63% rostered, so he's probably rostered in your league, but he's worth something noting. Like I said, Tommy DeVito wants to just dump it off. That's where Wan'Dale Robinson kind of prospers. Quentin Johnston, available in about 40% of leagues. He hasn't been great if he hasn't gotten a touchdown, but he's coming off a career high in targets, although I think he only had 2 catches on it, which is kind of crazy. And he's playing the Ravens, who are on average giving up 42 fantasy points, best in the NFL, against wide receivers. So he's always a shot to catch a deep ball. Christian Watson, another guy. It seems like, actually, now I'm looking at it, he had a couple of guys that are kind of, you're not happy if you start them, but if they get a touchdown, and they're typically a long touchdown, and you're happy. You can say that about most players, but these guys are some of the most athletic in the NFL. Christian Watson, available in half of leagues. He's averaging a 21% target share over these last 3 games, facing opponents who will put up points for the rest of the season. 49ers, Dolphins, Lions, Seahawks, Saints, Vikings, and those are teams that are formidable to the pass. So, Christian Watson's always a gamble that you could throw him out there. Just had a monster game here this last week, and the target share is kind of boosting up. MVS, Marquez Valdez Scantling. He's available 30, about 70% of leagues. He's on bye, so you certainly don't have to pick him up here this week, but he's playing the Raheed Shaheed role. Low volume, but always a chance to score deep. And then I put this one in here as kind of, if they're available, pick up one of them. The Browns wide receivers. Personally, for me, it goes Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, and Elijah Moore. That's how I would rank them, and that's how I think that the community is ranking them because they're rostered in that percentage. So Jameis Winston, he is throwing it 44 times a game on average, averaging 320 yards. That has to go to somewhere. David Njoku's I didn't mention him in the news, but he's kind of banged up with a knee injury. I think he's perfectly fine, but it's something to monitor as well. But the receivers, they're going to eat. It's a gamble each week who it's going to be. Happened to not be a Tillman week this last week, but the targets are still there for everybody. These guys are on on pace for a monster target share when he's throwing it 44 times a game. So, it's a scary schedule coming up. You got the Steelers twice, you got the Broncos, Chiefs, Dolphins, all not great for pass catchers, but it's by apocalypse. You're going to have to flex some of these guys, and some of you are in deeper leagues. So yeah, you might have to play them. If you are in a deep league, last wide receiver we got here, Adam Thielen, old man Thielen. He's coming out, off of IR. He should be the target leader, I would assume, for, Bryce Young, led Panthers. Xavier Leggett, he has been the wide receiver one in a sense. Some people would say Coker, but nevertheless, there's not a for sure thing. We've seen him have success last season with Adam Thielen. So, yeah, you could do worse. You could do worse, certainly. Speaking of doing worse, let's go on to the tight ends. It's almost always a crap show. However, this might be our best tight end week to pick up somebody. Taysom Hill. I know you all saw it by now, but, he's only 50% rostered in fantasy leagues. He's going into a bye, so if you need somebody to start, obviously you can't go here, but I'm really happy starting him after this week. If so. And he's not a tight end. You get to play him there, and he's not a tight end. He's got the 4th easiest schedule for tight ends, which, again, that's kind of an asterisk because he's not one, in my opinion. 7 carries for 138 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. He had 8 receptions on 10 targets, for 50 yards. 37 half PPR points. That is better than any game that Travis Kelce has had in his career. That is insane. Travis Kelce's best game, 10 for 191 and 2. There's 36 points. Very, very close. And not saying Taysom Hill is better than Travis Kelce, but he is putting up elite production here just this last week. Are you expecting 37 again? Absolutely not. But these rushing touchdowns and these receiving touchdowns, he's kind of a touchdown machine. He's going to fumble. He's going to throw picks. He's going to throw the ball too. There's just so many different avenues for him to generate fantasy points. Your tight end position, which that's all you can ask for at the tight end position for sure. Jonnu Smith, he's been great. 6 for 101 and 2 touchdowns, 22% target share over the past 6 games. That's all you could ask for at the tight end position. So he's kind of plug and play for me. Will Disley, I hate mentioning this name because I dropped Will Disley on Sunday for Dawson Knox because Dalton Kincaid was out. And I said, he's going to get so much usage. He's playing the Chiefs, which are the best matchup for tight ends. And he ran the most routes, but did not give me a ton of fantasy points. Will Disley, however, on the other end, he was the tight end pickup of the week last week for us. He just registered 4 for 80 and a touchdown. He's averaged a 23% target share over the past 5 weeks. And he has the 3rd easiest schedule for tight ends. I dropped Ferguson for Will Disley, who I eventually dropped for Dawson Knox. And because I was he's with Cooper Rush. I don't really want that. Will Disley, it's not a beautiful name, but his schedule and the way he's been being used in their offense for the Chargers, you have to play him. So, yeah, he's kind of plug and chug. Like, I'm going through the rest of the season basically with him. He has no bad matchups. Hunter Henry, I'm not going to mention it long, Luke, because I know you're listening. He's rostered only 50% of leagues, 9 targets, 6 for 63. Pretty fun matchups coming up. And then Zach Ertz, always reliable. He's not a big play guy like some of these other guys like Jonnu or Taysom Hill, but he's been pretty safe for fantasy as far as tight ends go. At the quarterback stream of the week, there's not a lot of options out there, but there's a couple guys who might be available. We've mentioned them basically every week. Bo Nix, also aka Bo Namath. He's probably rostered at this point. 60% of leagues he's rostered in, so but he's the quarterback 7. Like, he has a nice schedule to come. You got to believe in him. Russell Wilson, this one is kind of hard. Hopefully you've got better options than this, but he failed to throw a touchdown in week 11, and we recommended him last week because he was playing the Ravens, and they have been one of the best for quarterbacks. The last time Russ didn't throw a touchdown in a game, all the way back to week 13 in 2022, which, funny enough, was against the Ravens. He plays the Browns. They're 20th against quarterbacks. I think you can go back to the Russell Wilson well. Hopefully you've got better options, but I think you can go right back to it. And then Geno Smith, available in about half of leagues. Third highest over-under of the week. They play the Cardinals, who are middle of the pack against quarterbacks. He just got DK back, who DK, has been top 5 in end zone targets over the past 3 seasons. I mean, this is a big boost for him. And then JSN, he's just kind of breaking out. We've seen in the past couple weeks that he is that guy. Whatever you saw rookie season, no, he's getting better into the offense. Maybe Shane Waldron a little bit there, but nevertheless, Geno Smith is somebody you can plug this week. And then at the defense, I'm going to give you kind of a two-parter. I'm going to give you some defenses to play this week. I'm going to give you some defenses to play for the playoffs. Kind of hold them and go from there. The Chiefs, if they're available, they play the Panthers. I mean, they're probably dropped. They played the Bucks, the Broncos, the Bills. They're ranked 23rd on the season, but they get back-to-back really good matchups. They play the Panthers here this week and then the Raiders next week. I always try to look for those ones so I can play them for multiple weeks if possible. It just happens to be, 2 of the worst offenses in the league. And then the Commanders versus the Cowboys. They're available in 70% of leagues. They get good matchups as well. They get the Cowboys and they get the Titans. Like, we saw what the Texans just did against the Cooper Rush-led Cowboys. If they put Trey Lance in, even better, arguably, because they really can't do anything there in Dallas. The Commanders versus Dallas is who I would like to pick up this week. And then the playoff defenses, like, maybe you already have the playoffs locked up. Like I said, in 3 of 7 of my leagues, I know that I'm in the playoffs already. So I'm scheming and trying to get that advantage here into the playoffs already. There are a lot of defenses that kind of got you there. So these were the ones that helped me get to the fantasy playoffs or lock my shot there. My comfort level with some of them isn't really high. Like the Vikings, they're the number 1 defense. They only have 1 out of 3 games in the fantasy playoffs that I would be confident starting them. The Broncos, 1 out of 3 games. The Steelers, none of their games I am excited to play in the fantasy playoffs. The Bills, 2 out of the 3 of their games. The 49ers, 0 of their games. And the Lions, 1 out of 3. Like, there are some really, really difficult matchups for these defenses that got you there. So maybe you audible out of them and then play some average defenses against really bad offenses. For example, the Cincinnati Bengals, week 15 through 17, here's their schedule. They get the Titans. Will Levis is prone to make plenty of mistakes. The Browns, Jameis Winston has been chucking it, but he starts off a game with a pick 6 every now and then. He's always, you can always take one to the house on Jameis Winston. And then the Broncos. Broncos have looked pretty good. Maybe you audible out of that one. And then the Buccaneers, weeks 15 through 17, they play the Chargers. Not so happy there, but they play the Cowboys and then the Panthers in championship week. Like those last 2, the semifinals and then the finals, you arguably couldn't ask for a better defense. The Bucs defense is okay, probably worse than average, but their schedule is lined up where it just makes it perfect for them. So that's exactly what I like. And that's it for the fantasy, waivers here in week 12. Like we went through it pretty quickly. Again, Luke was having a little bit of issues. Hopefully we get everything settled there. We're going to be back. We're actually going to do a podcast. Maybe I should have mentioned this here at the beginning, but we're going to be doing a podcast here now on Wednesday. Not going to be waivers. As you know, we've mentioned it all season. The running backs are kind of pick up your insurance running backs. You know who to pick up as far as tight ends go and wide receivers. So we really want to be more beneficial to the viewers. And what we're going to be doing is Wednesday nights, we're going to record. So it'll come out on Thursday mornings for you all. We're going to be recording the matchups of the week. So we'll be going through like Thursday night football, Steelers, Browns, like who I'm playing in that. Am I starting Nick Chubb? Am I starting Jalen Warren, somebody who we mentioned on the waiver wire here? Like, who do we like in these particular matchups? Who do we have confidence in playing, and why? Getting into the analytics of, the Steelers have been, brutal for, opposing fantasy players. Like, do you have confidence? And just giving a confidence level on it. So, it'd be better for the viewers, better for you all to understand where we're coming from, and then why. So, again, if you haven't checked it out already, go to fantasyindex.com. You can check out all the latest articles. You can go to the store, check out our in-season rankings, our cheat sheets, our bets, all different types of newsletter there. So, again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
This has been the Fantasy Index Podcast. For more great content, premium rankings, and cheat sheets, head over to fantasyindex.com.